So when I woke up today, I saw that Season 11 patch notes have dropped, and I was like, okay, I'm going to get on and review them. And then I saw Wattson got buffed, so then I said, alright, we're going to ignore the rest of the patch notes, and I'm going to make an entire video just on the Wattson part itself, because this is all I care about at this point. So as a pro Wattson player myself, if I can even call myself that, I wanted to go over the patch notes of Wattson only, and give you guys my thoughts on how Wattson will be more viable, and how I think these changes are going to impact her as a legend in general. So here I'm actually going to skip the general updates on her because these are just quality of life and they really don't have much impact. The only kind of big deal here is the hitbox size increase, but Wattson had the smallest hitbox in the game already, so this just puts her back in line with Wraith and Lifeline, and she's still going to have one of the smallest hitboxes in the game. So not really a big deal here. So moving on, and we can actually talk about the actual changes to her utility, and we start with her fences. And the first thing is increased damage on crossing a fence by 33% from 15 to 20. So if someone runs into your fence, you're going to get hit 20 instead of 15 now. But Wattson fence damage wasn't even a good thing to begin with. The reason why you put up a fence is so people get stunned when they walk through it. So like, this is a good change, don't get me wrong, but this is not going to be a big impact like the other buffs I'm going to be reading are. Now this one right here, this is definitely a very big buff for Wattson. So it says increased debuff duration on crossing a fence by 100%. And then it's from 1.5 to 3 seconds. So when you run into a Wattson fence, you get stunned like an arc star and you can't turn. And anyone who's ran into a Wattson fence before knows how awful it is that you can't turn and shoot back because you can't move. This going from 1.5 to 3 seconds is actually going to make running through a fence basically mean your death. A 3-second stun is longer than an arc star stun, and if you've gotten stunned by an arc star in itself, then you know how awful that is, and it basically means you're guaranteed to die after. I think this is a good change because this is actually going to make Wattson's fences something to actually be feared. Now, increase the time allowance to be hit again by a fence effect by 100%. So currently, when you run into a Wattson fence, you can't be hit by the same fence again for 0.5 seconds, but after the update, it's going to be 1 second. So in a sense, this is a nerf, but it's not a big deal because typically when people are pushing you and you're playing Wattson, they're running through your fence or they're sliding through it and they're going right past it. And it's pretty rare that someone gets hit by your fence more than once to begin with, so although it's a nerf, it's not one I think we're really going to feel at all. Decreased recharge time by 50% from 30 to 15 seconds. This is good. This means Wattson will actually get nodes back quicker than a caustic barrel comes back, which is a big thing because caustic should never be getting a barrel back quicker than a Wattson node. So again, really good buff here. The cooldown before was terrible. Increased placement range by 50%. Again, just another quality of life type of buff. In Season 11, I believe she'll be able to put a fence away from her about 6 or 7 meters away. So you don't have to run out in the open to get a fence down. You should be able to place it further away from you so you don't put yourself at much risk to connect two nodes. Decrease the delay between fences shutting off and reactivating after an ally passes through them. So this one right here is actually a really good buff because I couldn't tell you how many times I have died to someone because I try to go hide behind a fence and I run through it and the fence shuts off and then they chase me through and the fence doesn't come back up until after the enemy I've been fighting actually came through the fence too. So this is actually really good. Now you're going to be able to bait people into coming to you where they think there isn't a fence. This is actually really good because now you can run into a room, you have a fence, and when it shuts off, it'll come back up right away. So if they're like hard chasing you, I would say, where they're right on you, the fence will come back up right away so they can't get in the room before the fence comes back on. Wattson now moves at unarmed speed already in placing fence nodes. This is just saying that when you have your fence in your hand, you'll move as quick as you do when you have your weapon holstered, so with your fist out. Again, not a big deal, just quality of life a little better. And the last one, fence nodes can now be placed as soon as the weapon is ready. This again is also not a big deal, it's just a quality of life improvement. Moving on to her ultimate, and this is where I saw a lot of people, specifically on Twitter to be honest, complaining, saying this was a bad change, but I'm going to go over why I think all this is all good. First thing, reduce the number of active pylons Wattson can place from 3 to 1. So let's be real, whoever actually had more than one down to begin with, when the generator only lasts 90 seconds, there was no way you would ever get down more than one at a time regardless. And even with that, there was no point in having more than one to begin with. So like, even though people might see this and immediately think nerf, like this is really nothing. This means nothing. You just ignore this. The pylon now lasts forever. So anyone who played Apex around when Wattson was meta around her release, you would know that this was actually a thing before, that her ultimate did always last forever in the past. And the generator lasting forever was a big part of why she was meta to begin with, so I think this is a big step in towards making her viable. I definitely think this is a really good change here, and that this is what they actually had to do to make her somewhat viable again. Okay, now this is the one that I saw a lot of people complain about here and they didn't like, but let me go over this and tell you why this is a good thing. So now Wattson Generator will only heal 250 shields total, and then after that, it will not heal shields. So basically, Wattson Gen will become a anti-ordnance for the rest of its lifetime after it heals 250. Now, the reason why this isn't a bad thing is because when Wattson was meta in the past, the competitive map was King's Canyon. And not only that, the loot was terrible on that map at the time as well, and there was no such thing as a replicator. The reason why Wattson was viable is because you needed her to have a good shield economy for your entire team. But now that we have World's Edge with better loot and we have replicators to craft shields, Wattson really is not that viable as a legend to sustain shields anymore because getting shields is not hard now. So having a cap on how much shield you can get from a generator is really not a big deal at all. If you are one of the people who overreacted to this change, don't look at this that negatively. It's really not going to affect you that much. And the reason why I think that change is okay is because they increased the shield recharge rate by 150%. So what this is saying is when you're sitting next to a Wattson generator and your shield is coming back, you'll actually get your shields back 1.5 times quicker. Which I did watch a playtest and I did see how much quicker it is, and this is a very big change, and this will actually make fights kind of favored on your side because of how fast your shield comes back. What this is implying, the fight's kind of a stalemate and you're not just full on fighting each other, because in relation to that change, this change here, taking damage while generating shields will delay regeneration by 1 second. So what this is saying is if you take damage, your shields will not be recharged for a solid 1 second off the generator. Well, that's actually not a bad thing anyways, because when you use Wattson Gen, you're typically healing off of it because you're not fighting, so you're just letting yourself passively heal off of it to begin with. Well, that's not a big deal at all, because Wattson ult was never made for you to be directly in a fight to begin with. And then the last thing, when your ult is out of shields, it'll no longer recharge shields, and the rest of its lifetime will be there for just basically anti-grenade and anti-utility from other legends. Now, back to the whole 250 shield thing. If you're still one of those people who just wants to abuse Wattson ult just for the shields, the reason why this change isn't bad, because Wattson can get her ultimate off of one ult excel instantly, because that's part of her passive, and then she can also hold 2 ult excels per stack instead of 1. So if you're someone who really wants to abuse that, it's not hard finding ult excels, and you could carry 4 ult excels for 2 backpack slots. So you can still play her the exact same if you choose to play it that way. Take my word on this when I say that this maximum shield recharge that they added is really not a negative trade-off in comparison to how much faster her shield recharge rate's going to be, because it does make a big difference. And then on top of that, the ultimate lasting forever is what's really going to, I think, bring her back into meta. Now everything else from here and down is not really worth talking about. It's just UI changes to let you know how much shield there is left on the gen and stuff like that. So I don't think I need to go over it. But I want to give my final thoughts on if she's going to be good or viable or even comp viable. And my short answer to that is yes, I do think she can actually be played in competitive now. So that by that I mean ranked and ALGS tournaments. The biggest problem in game right now is probably Caustic and comp. And really the only effective counter in the game to Caustic is Wattson Gen. And now that it lasts forever, you basically have an anti-Caustic ultimate for the entire game until you have to move or if you don't have a generator. And I also think the fence buff she got does a good job at putting her in line with Caustic in terms of defensive capabilities. So that being said, yeah, I do think Wattson is going to be way better, and I do think she could be played in comp, ranked, and pubs, all 3. And with that being said, I will be trying her in comp myself. Now I'm going to end the video here because there's nothing else for me to talk about. But thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you on Season 11 with Wattson gameplay. Oh yeah, one more thing I wanted to say. Follow me on Twitch. My link is in the description if you want to see me play Wattson in pubs. And if you also want to see me play her in Season 11.